Hello and greetings. The fourth day of our online choir event at the Archive of Women in Music in Frankfurt. In fact, we are in Frankfurt, but also in many other places today. We're meeting to hear about two composers who have been doing special work during these difficult times for choirs with the corona situation in our world today. And we will be speaking with Karen Siegel from New Jersey. And then in a later short interview, we will be hearing from Alberto Arroyo, a Spanish composer who lives in Dresden. With Alberto, we will hear Marleen Hoffmann from Berlin, who will be speaking with him. But we will begin with a nice interview with Karen Siegel from New Jersey. Karen, I'm very, very happy to greet you. My name is Mary Ellen. We've met before online, never in person. That's typical of these times, I guess. We were just talking about how unusual that is. And we have enjoyed an interesting exchange these past few months during this special time. And I would like to say how I found out about you as a wonderful composer of choral music. You're really specialized in this area as a singer yourself and composer and conductor. You have all those roles. How did I find out about you? Well, I heard about a community choral singing book called the Justice Singing Book, which is used by choirs, especially in the United States, but also now in Europe, that are trying to express their feelings about matters of justice in our world. And there's a piece by you in this book, which is called Anna Elna, which my choirs love to sing. It's around, and we have picked up on it. Both of my choirs here in Munich. I lead the Munich International Choral Society, and the Regenbogenchor München, which is an LGBT group, have started studying this work and really enjoy singing it. So I got in touch with you. I was intrigued. I read about your work, and I was intrigued, and I got in touch. And my choirs have started singing further works of yours. And in fact, one of my choirs has been a co-commissioning choir for your newest piece, Meditation.
Right.
But let's go back in time. Well, actually, maybe just introduce yourself for a moment. Tell us about a little bit about your background, your training, and yeah, your attachment to choral music.
Well, I've been writing choral music for a long time. I've always been drawn to vocal music and to texts and using texts. And actually, in my graduate studies, I focused on instrumental music because that was kind of the harder one for me. That was what I needed the instruction in. And vocal music always came naturally to me, as it does for, I think, most composers who are also vocalists. So I've really enjoyed composing for the voice. Largely, my background in choral music started with C4. C4, the Choral Composer Conductor Collective, which is an ensemble I co-founded in New York City in 2005.
Wonderful. And so you can tell you've been working along these lines for a long time. And I would like to go back indeed in time a little bit and talk about the progression or your development as a choral composer.
Yeah.
Although you do also have these other roles, I've well understood. Let's look back maybe 5 or 10 years back to pieces you were writing at that point for choir, because as you have told me, there's a nice progression to be found in your choral music. And in fact, some of your choral music is especially appropriate for COVID times, interestingly enough. But let's go back. Perhaps you can tell us something about one of your or a couple of your earlier works and maybe even play us some examples.
I'd like to talk a little bit about a piece called Blessing, which I wrote for the Te Deum with chamber choir a few years ago. And in this piece, I was very interested in the juxtaposition of two different textures, the straightforward melody and rhythms of homophony versus the fluidity of the aleatoric textures, where each singer repeats a phrase out of sync with the others in their voice part, taking some liberties with rhythms and tempi. And you'll see that this is largely the texture that I'm using in my music for live remote choir now. It works so well in an atmosphere where you have latency that is just something you have to incorporate into the work. So this piece really it's a good example of how I use aleatoric writing before the current pandemic crisis. And it's a lot of juxtaposition between solid versus fluid. in the texture. And it goes back and forth with the connection of some of the sustained notes from the homophonic sections carrying over to support the aleatoric parts. So I'm going to play now the opening of Blessing, and I'll show you the score. Just pull that up. Give me a minute. And here we go. So that is the beginning of Blessing. And I'd like to compare that to an earlier work called Signifying Nothing. So I realized only just recently that there is a connection between these two works. Signifying Nothing also plays with this idea of going back and forth between fluidity and solidity with rhythmic fluidity. But in this piece, I use polyrhythm, which is something that my mentor Tanya Leon really got me excited about. And the affinity for rhythmic fluidity is something that we have in common. It's one reason why I chose her as my teacher in my graduate studies. So this piece is called Signifying Nothing. This is a performance by C4 with conductor David Rentz. And this is just a little background about this piece. I came up with this idea to go back and forth between solidity and really no existence at all. I wanted to flow, to ebb in and out of existence, both with the rhythm and melody and with the text. So you'll see that the choral music, the music exists and then it falls apart and falls away and comes back and falls apart. So here we go, Signifying Nothing with the Tomorrow, Tomorrow, and Tomorrow monologue from Macbeth.
Thank you. Wonderful to see the juxtaposition of those two pieces. Um, I just had the feeling there's some sort of symbolic value to the fact that, in a way, the parts that are anchored and rhythmic and clear, they feel like the world as it used to be,
Hmm.
and the fluid parts are sort of what we're going through now. That was a sudden feeling that I had when I listened to the first piece, to tell the truth. Yes.
Yeah, I can hear that. That's definitely the current perspective laid on
Yes.
top of it, and it's nice that it can have a new meaning and a new context.
Well, that's, I think, what art and music is often about, actually, and it's quite lovely to think about. I think our talk yesterday evening showed a lot of that aspect to how music develops. The meaning of music also develops, sort of in a semiotic fashion. And those are fascinating topics to think about. We could really delve into that in our next symposium. Um, yes, I would like to go on. My choir met with you actually during one of our online rehearsals back in the spring, and we talked and worked on a piece together. In fact, you helped us online to study the piece, and it was called "Here I Am." And you showed us some special ways to study music online and to work together online. Perhaps you can tell us something about that.
Sure. Well, I'm just pulling it up to share with you. But Here I Am, I wrote as a gift to the choral community. It was the first piece that I wrote for live remote choir. And I really wanted to be able to show choirs that there was a way to sing together. And I knew that new repertoire would be needed. A lot of conductors were complaining that, oh, we're trying these Zoom rehearsals and it just doesn't work. Of course, but with new repertoire, we can get a little closer to it working. It's a very different experience. It's not quite like being in the same room, but it can be very gratifying, especially when you haven't been able to sing with others for a long time. To hear your colleagues and your friends again and make music with them is quite special. And for the audiences too, to be able to experience that live is remarkable, and also allows for interaction with the audience in the chat, which I actually heard after our first live stream with C4 that people really liked that, because they would never feel comfortable just going up to us to ask us questions afterwards, even if we're in the same room. But when they're invited to share their questions in a chat format, they felt more comfortable doing so.
Yeah, you can even talk during the concert.
Yeah.
And also there's the geographical aspect. I mean, some of your work, you'll talk about that, I guess, with C4, had you connecting with people in completely different locations.
That's true. So C4 is a New York City-based ensemble, but over the years we've developed a network of ensembles that are sister ensembles that have developed inspired by C4. They have started their own group. Some of them were started by alumni of C4 who moved to other cities, and some have just popped up on their own by people who were not associated with us but were interested in what we were doing and wanted to do something similar in their city. There are now 5 different groups in the C4 network throughout the US. So we started doing these live streams and we realized, we can invite others. And we had a couple of people who were really interested in working with us. And then we started opening it up and say, hey, who in our sister ensembles wants to work with us? So our first few live streams had both a number of people from Inversion Ensemble. Well, it took a little while to get everyone involved, but eventually we had Inversion Ensemble in Austin, Texas, and also someone from the LA group C3LA. And as it stands now, it's about half Inversion members and half C4 members that are really continuing with it. And it's been really fantastic to get to know these colleagues in Texas who I've never worked before, who are amazing musicians. And, not everyone has time for this after working on the computer all day. C4 is a semi-professional ensemble, so some of the members are professional musicians in other ways, and a lot of the members have other types of work that they do during the day. So we have not been able to get our full membership to participate online, but that's fine because we have people in other cities who want to join us. So we've been
Yes.
able to sustain a good number of singers for our choir.
I've experienced that with my online rehearsals also. I've had alumni from the choir who sometimes live in other
Mhm.
places now come and join us and work with us and reminisce with us, and that was very lovely actually. Very different kind of rehearsal. I think we almost need a new word for it. It's not the traditional rehearsal. It's
No.
something new. We'll find a new word, I guess. Let's go back to Here I Am. You taught me something really important with this piece, which I had not known. When I first looked at your music, I thought, well, how can you rehearse that online? And then you showed me this sign for the entrance of the sopranos, for the altos, for the tenors and basses. And I found out that that worked quite well. But perhaps you can tell us more about your piece that you wrote as a or distributed as a gift to the choral world in COVID times.
Sure. Well, the first thing to mention is that it mostly uses aleatoric texture. So that's when you have a phrase that is repeated, as in parts of blessing, that the singers can use their own liberties for tempo and rhythm, and they should not attempt to be synchronous. It should sound like flowing water, babbling brook, be very flowing and not together. So that was actually something we had to work on the premiere of Blessing, was make sure that they're a little more staggered. And that's
Yeah.
sometimes hard for singers who are so used to being together to try to not be together and get the spacing right. If you have a smaller group, it's a little more, you just need to put more attention into finding the right spacing. So for Here I Am, we have largely aleatoric textures. There are also times when the choir comes together for a sustained chord. And I realized it works if the chord is long enough that that the focus is more on, oh, we're hearing a sustained sound. That's nice and different, instead of on the fact that the cutoff's not going to be all together. And the initial start of the chord is also not going to be completely together, because synchrony is not what we can do well um, in a live remote context. But using it sparingly, I find that it can be effective, and that the focus is more on the chord itself that is heard rather than those imperfections.
I've
So, those
noticed,
are
yeah, thank you. I've noticed in my rehearsals even just I do simple warm-ups very slowly and wait on chords until everyone's there.
right.
And I think working with Zoom in a sense has Zoom in that case. I mean, you could use other systems, and you sometimes do, I know. But I think we in that sort of rehearsing, we hear differently, we work differently. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I'll mention before I play this is that this was the very first live stream for C4. So it was really, we were still experimenting and figuring things out. So you'll notice that the visuals are not fantastic. There's one person who will see his name there instead of his video. That's because he's our audio engineer, and he didn't want to crash his computer by showing his video during it.
Yes.
But we hadn't yet figured out how to not, or that we needed to have him not show his video if he's not going to be having his camera on, because he's a real expert with coding, but he was also kind of new to all the intricacies of Zoom at that point. So you'll notice that the visuals are not so sophisticated. I watched the last C4 live stream this week and was floored by how polished it is and how amazing, how great the progress has been for both the technical and artistic side for C4. I watched that as an audience member because at the current moment I am too busy with commissions and supervising remote school to sing and
Yes.
conduct with C4 at the moment. But I look forward to returning to C4 when I can as a singer and conductor. So let me play this now, just an excerpt from the middle of Here I Am.
Oh, thank you. It's lovely for me to hear that again because I've studied it with my group, so I have a special connection. But it's also appropriate because the title of our choral event is Ortswechsel, change of place, and your piece is about here I am, arriving somewhere, establishing presence, be it online or perhaps here I am can also, of course, be performed in the concert hall when things get back to normal.
Yeah,
I've understood. Yeah.
I was actually thinking of it more as in instead of a physical place, here I am, here connected with you, here present with you, even as we're distanced physically.
Yes, and my choir felt that absolutely. It's something that pulled us together as a group, and we still, when we meet each other, when we do happen to be able to see each other, we'll sometimes say, "Here I am." We made it. We made it. And now, as you may know, we're back to distancing here in Germany. As of tomorrow, there are great um, uh, sanctions on, or we cannot meet, or only we can only go out to work and for
Yeah.
special things that we absolutely need to
Soon we'll
do.
have that here.
Yeah, it's happening tomorrow in Germany.
Yeah.
Here I am. That in that particular piece, the text repeats itself. Um, you yourself usually, we heard a piece with a text by Shakespeare, but generally you write your own texts. That's
I
something
often
that
do.
is interesting to me. Mhm.
Yeah, actually, the Shakespeare piece that you heard is the one example of a time when I came up with the music first, or the idea for the
Oh,
music first.
okay. Hmm.
'Cause I had that idea about ebbing in and out of nothing, and I said, "Oh, I have to find a text to do that." And my husband said, "Well, how about the Macbeth soliloquy?"
Uh-huh.
And I was like, "Oh, that would be perfect."
Hmm.
But I do often write my own text. That's something that's happened more and more in recent years. I think it took me time to get the confidence to do that because I don't have formal training as a poet. Actually, I have background in psychology before I focused on music, but I have always loved writing, and I think that's something I've always had a skill for. So I think it only makes sense that as I get more confident expressing myself artistically, that that's part of the expression.
Hmm. Yesterday, we talked for a long time with a very diverse group of choral conductors about the importance of text in choosing pieces. We even talked about, in certain cases, with choirs and also other choirs, that there are some traditional pieces that we almost feel like we have to change texts on. I don't know what your opinion about that is, but we were pretty much in agreement that we need to be maybe a little more open about this particular point in
Sure.
future, in certain contexts anyway. Your newest piece, or one that you've worked on quite recently, and was a joint commission. 13 choirs commissioned you together. One of them is one of my choirs,
Yeah.
to write a piece called Meditation. And perhaps you can give us a little hint about that piece. I think the premiere is coming up soon, I believe.
There will be a few premieres coming up, and you can look at the performance page on my website for the details about that.
Yes.
Um, but basically, with this piece, the text, speaking of the importance of text, the text is an original poem that's a meditation. It's inspired by a specific meditation that helped me in the early times of COVID. And it focuses on a way forward. And this is the text that I want to be singing right now. And I thought it would be helpful for choirs to to have a text like this that they can connect with. And I've been pleased that they have found it resonates with them. And as for the music, it one element that it uses that Here I Am does not is a solo, because melody doesn't come across in Here I Am in a very clear way, and that's fine. But I wanted to find a way for it to do so, and I realized that having a solo really allows that melody to be heard in a clear way. So I use the solo prominently in meditation.
We've learned also that there are certain things you can do with phrase singing. You know, you might ask someone to sing one phrase and then change within on a remote rehearsal, switch to someone else to sing the next phrase. That sort of thing can actually
Sure.
work quite well.
Another thing that I realize is coming out of this live remote music is it works well for gradual transformations in rhythm and form. So looking at the piece on more of a large scale, for example, the form of meditation is one that starts very chaotic and very loud and very with fast rhythms, and it gradually chills out, calms down, just
Yes.
like the effect of meditating in a time of distress. And at the end, the rhythms are slower, longer durations. The tempo doesn't change, but the rhythm has longer durations, and the dynamics are quite soft. Also, the register starts with a very wide register, and the register restricts as it goes on. So those
I'm
kind of longer formal changes come across well in this environment.
I am really looking forward to studying this piece with my Munich International Choral Society. We'll start in January to work on this piece. I
I look forward to
can hardly
working with you
wait.
on it.
Yeah. Let's go back to the very first piece I mentioned, the way that I got to know you as a composer, Anna, the round that we sang. Then the choir went on to sing To Be Free, by the way, which is a lovely piece of yours also, which was written for the Yale Glee Club. And we found out in our exchange that we had both sung with that group over time. In my case, it was long before you did, but we both have a connection there,
Mhm.
which is quite a special thing to think about. But you have come back to Anna Elna also, and you
Mhm.
have done a setting, I guess, for SATB. And perhaps you
Right.
can tell us a bit about that, just to close up our interview. Hmm.
Sure. So this newer version of Anna Elna uses all of the components of the original round, plus it adds a speaking component. Because when I think about what are the opportunities we have in singing online, one of them is that with microphones, there are effects that come across really well that would be hard to use in a real piece, such as whispering, which I have not yet used, but speaking comes across very well because a speaker is mic'd. So this is one piece that will need some modification when it's performed in person. It may need a microphone for the speaker, or it may need modifications for the dynamics so that the speaker is heard over the choir. So this piece layers the Ana Elna Rafana Lanu prayer, which is a prayer for healing of the body and the soul and emotional, mental healing. And it layers that with the Mishe Berach prayer, which is a prayer for healing. And in my own synagogue, the two are traditionally layered. The synagogue congregation sings the chant, which is the main line of the round, the first line. And the rabbi chants the Mishe Berach prayer over it, and people line up in the aisle and give the rabbi specific names of loved ones that they want mentioned and in the prayer for healing. So I thought it'd be really nice to bring back the layering, and the speaker speaks the Mishe Berach prayer while the choir sings all three elements of the round in different ways.
Wonderful! I can hardly wait to hear it. And we haven't gotten into the technical side of things too much, although I know you can talk about that very competently as well. You've experimented with all different systems. C4 has experimented a lot and found out some best practices for dealing with online music making. But we're at the end of our time now. I would like to thank you very much, Karen. It's been wonderful talking with you from Munich to New Jersey. And I would like to pass the word on now to our team in Berlin and in Dresden. Marleen Hoffmann will be interviewing Alberto Arroyo, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Karen.
Mary
Thank
Ellen.
you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So it's my part to welcome Alberto Arroyo. Alberto Arroyo is a Spanish composer living and working in Dresden in Germany. He's actually writing his PhD at the Institute of New Music at the Carl Maria von Weber Music Academy. He also founded and is the artistic director of the ensemble Continuum 21, which plays old and new music on historical instruments. But why is he here today? He's also working together with a cappella groups specializing on new music, like the Neue Vokalsolisten Stuttgart and last but not least, Auditiv Vokal Dresden. And this is the ensemble with which he worked together in virtual concert situations. So, Alberto, when the Corona pandemic started this spring, the ensemble Auditiv Vokal Dresden came up to you to produce a video. And you had a certain idea that you took Heinrich Schütz's Verleih uns Frieden, and your part was to compose improvisations on this theme. So why did you choose this piece by Heinrich Schütz, and how did you proceed? How did this project took form?
Well, hello, first place, and thanks for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here with you and using these very exceptional times to exchange opinions, projects, and to know also new colleagues. About your question, Auditiv Vokal, this vocal ensemble from Dresden, they had a concert that they had to cancel due to Corona. And they called me to invite me to participate in this idea, because we wanted to use the lockdown as an opportunity and do something artistic with that. Heinrich Schütz is a very important composer, not only in Germany, but especially in Dresden, because he was living here. He was the Kapellmeister in the Kreuzkirche, in one of the most important churches here. And he is very present in the city, as you can understand. And since some years, there are many composers and also ensembles trying to find bridges between the so-called early and contemporary music. And that's one of our goals with Continuum 21, with my ensemble, but also with Auditiv Vokal since 15 years. And I think that's we were collaborating. We had a first meeting with Olaf Katzer, the artistic director of the vocal ensemble, and Friedrich Hausen. He's a philosopher who knows a lot of contemporary and early music, and he was responsible for the dramaturgy of the project. So we decided to find bridges between Heinrich Schütz's motet Verleih uns Frieden and a new short composition, which was supposed to have open parts to be improvised. And it connects, I think, very well with Karen's compositions method and some of the pieces that we hear now. So that was the beginning of it. We were finding in the text of Verleih uns Frieden some keywords that could help us to build the new pieces. And I can mention a couple of them, like, for example, unser Gott alleine, like our God, our only God. And what does it mean today? Like the idea of God, and one can think of the idea of the market and of the system in which we live as the new gods, maybe not in a positive way, and other words that we took from the motet to build a new improvised compositions or composed improvisations. So that was the start. And then I wrote some sketches in which I took some material of the motet by Heinrich Schütz, and I kind of deconstructed that, but it sounded like a shadow in the background. And then we had like a recording session with Auditiv Vokal, with the singers, where they were improvising with the material, and then we constructed the dramaturgy with Heinrich Schütz and the new compositions. And then there was the recording of the video. And I think it was a fantastic work by Avenga, Olaf Katzer, Friedrich, and all the singers. It was really, really fantastic.
So how did the video and the images interact with the music? How did you solve this problem?
That's a good question. We were in a lockdown, so we had to talk a lot on the phone, talking like many times every day, working with people you don't know personally, which is so typical for these times, I think. Karen said that you don't know in person, Marleen and you, we don't know neither in person, which is funny, but we have talked several times, and that was also the kind of work with people from the video. They made a fantastic work. They received the music firstly, which is not the common method to do it. And they adjust like which very second of it, the images. And basically they decided to use two kind of environments. One in which the early music should sound in natural environments of Dresden and classical places of the city and so on. And there was also the time in which people started to wear this Schutz mask. So that's like the other environment in the night and so on. And they kind of presented these two worlds after another, so people could interpret, okay, what does it mean now, like this lockdown? What does it mean, early music, contemporary music, and so on. It was a fine work, especially with the timing. It was very, very sophisticated.
Yes, the video was also part of another project, the virtual concert, the so-called Webcert, Schutzraum, ein musikalisches Ethernet-Theater, which took place in June. And there were some videos shown during this concert, but he also composed another piece for this, which is called Long Distance Relation. He actually composed it together with 4 other composers, so it was a collaboration project, and these other composers come from all over the world. And there was one female composer, I think, among them. So, and the concept behind this piece was an interaction of the vocal ensemble, which was singing live on stage with the online audience. And the online audience was invited to send text messages and sound files that were either shown on a video screen on stage or that were made audible via laptop, so the interaction was made visible. So maybe before we have a short piece of that, you can tell us something about the topic of this piece.
Yeah, I think you describe it perfectly. I don't know what to say, but yeah, from our perspective, it was like the second stage of this bigger project, so to say. And we wanted to use again the lockdown as an opportunity. And we had the idea that people could have some kind of interaction from their computer, smartphones, and so on. So we came up with the idea of reinterpreting this doctrine of affections, which was very important in early music, but it's also important in my compositions, and try to present a new vision of it. So we decided to use the 5 basic affections proposed by René Descartes, the philosopher of the 17th century, I'm sorry, and split each affect, or each composer should work with each affect. I decided to work with hate, which is one of the strongest affects, I would say. But as you said, there were other young composers also working, which was a very beautiful collaboration from all around the world. Also female composers, a composer named Foyen from Persia. She's living in Leipzig now. Also a composer from Dresden, Richard Röbel from Spain, Manuel Sanchez and Emery Spielmann, Israel, New York. Which is, I think, represents very well the current situation. So multicultural female, male composers, interaction with the internet. So it means that auditive vocal is really connected to the today's society. And basically I had to work with this affect and compose like a little miniature in which people from home could send live, whether voice messages saying something that they hate, or text also saying something that they hate. And those texts or voice messages could be live integrated in the piece by the singers, and they would react to them, they would integrate it in their voices, and they would make some interaction with the other singers. And yeah, that was like my part. There were other kind of interactions with the other colleagues. But yeah, we were happy after this kind of experimental, innovative idea. It worked very well, technically and artistically. And I don't know, that was the first step of a new format maybe for the future. Let's see what kind of impulses it can give us.
Okay, I suggest that we show a little piece from that.
Yeah.
So I move a little forward, and here we can listen to your. Oops. Okay. Oh, all right. I think this didn't work, right? Did you?
We heard it. I don't know if everybody saw it, but we could.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, anyway, there will be a link on YouTube, so you can see the rest. So yes, basically, what was the problem for you as a composer to give enough room for the audience and for the interaction? How did you solve this?
We had this question how we can do it technically. We have a wonderful team in the Hochschule für Musik in Dresden. Christoph Mann was working very hard on kind of platform in which people from home could send whether WhatsApp or Telegram text or voice messages, and they were projected live before the singers, so they could see what people were writing, or through loudspeakers, so they could hear them singing and also people sending messages. Yeah, if you have like the structure to do it, if you have the time, if you have the technology and so on, which is something we have in the Hochschule in Dresden, and that's why, yeah, the institution is very good for experimenting, then it's possible. You just need the right people, hard work, and we had it. So yeah, if you dream big, you can do it in Germany. That's great about this country.
All right. Well, I'm afraid we are at the end of our time. Thank you very much. Anyone who wants to know more about Alberto Arroyo or Karen Siegel can also read the article which was published in the Chorzeit in the July-August edition this year. There's an article about all this new music written for virtual situations, concert situations. So now it's my part to say that there will be a digital choir practice. The last event of our digital choral days will be the digital choir practice, the live online practice starting at 4 o'clock with the Wohin ensemble, a project choir from Marburg under the direction of Mareike Hilbrich, and the Munich International Chorus Society under the direction of Mary Ellen Kitchens will be heard in 15 minutes time. So thank you very much.
Thank you.